And we're back with David Rothenberg talking about making music with whales. So, David, there has been a lot of backlash from the scientific community against your work, particularly when in the discussions of bird song, but I'm sure it applies to any animal that you take. This idea that you're elevating what's actually very practical type of behavior that sounds kind of musical, but in the case of birds is just to attract mates and repel threats. Why? I mean, it sounds like a very sensible explanation. Why isn't it enough?
There's one whale scientist who said when I interviewed him, he says, "You're just fucking with animals for the hell of it." And so I don't know if you can say that in your
Strong
show. You probably
words.
can. You're not on the radio. And so I turned that into a whole song. I just took his sounds and remixed them. Fucking with animals, fucking with animals. So
Oh
if you
my
want to hear
God.
that, that's on the Whale Music Remixed album from a few
Oh,
years ago.
wow. And
And
now he probably really hates
no,
you.
he's never said anything. Every time anyone's interviewed him about this, which is a few times, he's only said nice things. But he's a character and he's a good whale scientist. And the fact is, scientists often say, well, you're just messing with the subjects of our research. You're playing around with them. How do you know what your things are doing to them? You're not studying carefully. You're not being careful. You're not doing a research program. You're just fucking with animals for the hell of it. And so in that regard, I'm saying, well, I'm making music with them. And I would answer to that criticism. I'm taking them seriously in a way that you are not. If you're just thinking them as objects of research, I'm thinking them as individuals, animals, creatures you can interact with and share a sense of the love and performance of music with. And some might say that's just crazy arrogance, but I think it's just an interesting thing to try out.
But so the difference is, I mean, what you're trying to prove, because I mean, sure, I'm sure you can happily accommodate that sometimes birds would make sounds to attract a mate or to repel a threat, but you're saying that it's more than that and that they enjoy it and that there's something artistic and almost unnecessary about it, just beyond.
Yeah, I'm saying that, and
And
so was
yeah.
Charles Darwin. I haven't
Mhm.
gotten to that. To answer that criticism, I'd say, okay, yes, it's true. Male birds are singing territories and attract mates. Most of these singing species are doing that. That's the answer to why birds sing. But
Mm.
why then does one bird sing a small song like a chickadee going doo doo? That's the song of the chickadee.
Mm.
Doo doo. That's enough. And how come the mockingbird has to go pew 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 and go on for an hour for the same purpose and function?
Mm.
He's doing the same thing, but what's different about this bird is a question of aesthetics. It's a question of musicality, and the difference is not encompassed by that explanation. The
Mm.
scientists who say that's enough of an explanation are not getting into exactly what is being done by these birds. They're choosing to ignore that and say, I have nothing to say. It's not interesting to ask why this bird needs to make this sound as opposed to this other sound.
And I imagine you could actually probably make a comparison to cooking for humans. Like, yes, on the most baseline level, we enjoy or we have to cook, to feed ourselves or like
Mm.
prepare food to feed ourselves. But then beyond that, there's a huge amount of creativity and sophistication.
Yeah, or of human
You know.
music. People say human music is just to defend territories and attract mates, and you can say that, and it's not very interesting. It's partially true. It doesn't say much about the music. And if you
I'm
take
not sure how the defending territories would
Oh, sure, I'm making
play
my
out.
music here. Any musician will say, no, I'm the one who plays like this. You can't
Mm.
musical territories. Hip hop is all about that.
Mm.
Constantly, artists, there's just dissing some other rapper. Like he's full of shit. He doesn't know what he's doing. I've got the rhymes. You don't have them. It's all
Mm.
competition. And
Mm-hmm.
the same, in instrumental music, in classical music, virtuosos playing against each other, jazz
Mm-hmm.
competitiveness, or it's clearly part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
But is it all of it? And
no, of
that's what
course
you're
it's not.
saying
It's not.
is
It's just part
no.
of the
And for
function.
animals,
Doesn't
it's not all of it
The
either.
function does not explain the behavior so much as what it's. You can't just come up with the reason for something that is structured and beautiful and otherwise seems like arbitrary. If all you care about is function, the nature of what's being done ends up sounding arbitrary. Anything could have evolved.
Mm.
That's an aspect of natural selection.
Mm.
Anything could evolve. It might stick if it becomes useful over the generations or preferred over the generations. Okay, if you believe in survival of the fittest, if some trait evolves through a random mutation or whatever, it's retained if it ends up being advantageous. So what's advantageous, say, about the tail of a peacock? It's this huge, crazy thing you have to drag around. And what's the point of that? It's obviously be easier not to have that tail. So the desire for beauty in the
Mm.
female peacocks is supposed to be the the quality that makes this happen over generations. And most animals don't have such excessive beauty, something that evolves that seems really extreme. Just like the humpback whale song is really extreme, 23 hours of singing. That's extreme.
Oh my
Doesn't usually
God.
happen,
Wow,
or
that puts like
nightingales,
singers
hours
to
and
shame.
hours of singing throughout the night. It's like this evolved, but it's not it's usually this extreme stuff doesn't evolve. If you're interested in the music of nature, then extremes make good examples.
Mm.
You should investigate these. Why is this possible sometimes? And the very
Mm.
fact that it's possible suggests that there's the possibility for the need
Mm.
of
Some sort of
music
aesthetic
to evolve. Yeah,
appreciation.
aesthetics is part of
Right.
evolution, and I think if you pay attention to what's out there, if you look and you listen to what's really out there in the world, it will be hard to disagree with that.
Mm. And you incorporate serious scientific tools into your research.
Yeah, I
Right.
like to
Yeah.
collaborate with scientists. And when I started doing this, I was somewhat arrogant and naive. And in the book Why Birds Sing, I kind of challenged scientists. I say,
You're like,
you don't know what
I
you're
need these
talking
guys on my
about. You
side.
don't know what you're talking about. They said, look, you're why be so harsh? And many of them said I wasn't saying anything of use to them, but a handful said, you're right. We could try and study musicality in bird song in a scientific, statistical, quantifiable way. And over the years, I've been working with this team at CUNY, at first at City College, then now they're at Hunter College, this lab run by the scientist Ofer Chernikovsky. And he's studying all the sounds birds make as they learn to sing. And previously, he studied birds with very simple songs and recorded every sound they made as they learned to sing. And I said, why don't you try the same approach on single, long, complex songs? Maybe we could figure out statistically what structural elements might be in there. So it's a
Mm.
very quantifiable way of
It's
trying to understand
rigorous.
music. Yeah, rigorous in the
Right.
standard scientific way. And so we're trying to do that. We started publishing some papers, and they're very different than the kind of writing I usually do, which is telling interesting stories about people and animals. The scientific work is statistical and dry, and it's got diagrams and things like that.
And it's surely good to have both. But
Yeah, it's a different kind of. People ask, well, how should science and art be combined? And I say, they really have different criteria for truth.
Mm.
So, for example, I can make one recording, one moment, several minutes, like on my whale music CD, and the track called "Never Satisfied." Uh, one moment where the whale and the clarinet seem to come together in something musically interesting. Why is that piece called Never Satisfied? Because that is the name of the boat used by the whale song scientist Jim Darling. His boat's called the Never Satisfied because he's never satisfied, never has enough certainty, never has enough data. You have to go out and collect more and more and more. And to make my musical interaction something scientific, I have to do it like 1,000 times. And then statistically analyze it. And it would be nice to do that. I'd love to do it. But the effort involved in making these encounters happen is so far difficult enough that I can't do it all that often. So I would like to.
I wanted to ask actually earlier, and now you've mentioned it again. Is there something specific about the clarinet that you think whales respond particularly well to, or is that just the instrument that you happen to play very, very
It's
well?
the instrument I happen to play. I don't know how well I play it, but I play okay. And then it has a range, strangely enough, similar to the human voice. And the range of the human voice is actually similar to the humpback whale.
That was another thing I wanted to ask was, could you just sing into the...
Yeah, people do. Sometimes I've seen people, I've heard them sing to the whales without listening to the whales. They'll just go, oh, they don't stop. And it's just like, the whales are like a background to someone's vision. They don't stop.
Well, they want their whales to be an audience.
You have to leave space, really listen. And also the sign that you're listening is that your own human music is changing in the presence of the whale song. You have to be able to accept that, to realize this will transform you. And when people ask me, well, has doing this changed the way you play with humans? I would say, of course it has. It's really made me want to listen better and wanted to leave space for other people. And this last project, the Cicada Dream Band is a trio of very different kinds of musicians, all really listening to each other. And
are you and not including the cicadas?
Well, we played with cicadas live on the record. The cicadas are played by me on the computer as a kind of additional instrument. We have played live with cicadas. We put them on microphones just like this, and they behave pretty well. And that's you know,
And they feel like stars.
they just sing. I think cicadas are they're much more part of this whole group mind. When you're playing with insects, there's so many millions of them usually that it humbles you to be part of it.
This whole process sounds quite humbling.
Yeah,
To be honest.
but it's actually it's strange but exciting. Like it goes in different surprising directions. Like when I was playing last year when the 17-year cicadas emerged, which happens once every 17 years. You're just in the middle of millions of singing insects making whoosh, this kind of surrounding sound. At first, it sounds all like noise. When you get used to it, you realize there's all this structure, there's this beauty, there's this form, and it gets quite exciting.
Wow. Well, we're going to wrap up in a second. Before we do, my final question to you is, are there any other animals on your radar right
Thousands
now?
of other possibilities that
any special ones?
Then I'm going to do more things with humpback whales and with nightingales, because the idea of nightingales are so famous in literature and culture, and yet people don't listen to them that seriously and are quite surprised that they actually sound like electronic musicians. They sound like DJs or people playing laptops or synthesizers and going boom, 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 boom. They're so electronic. And how can this electronic sound be this beautiful bird of romantic poetry, of Shakespeare? Coleridge and John Clare, and
EDM's very romantic.
That's right, it's very romantic, and the nightingales are part of it, and particularly in Berlin, where you have electronic music everywhere. So I'm really going to go back and.
You sure it's not just the Berlin nightingales? Who are
that's a good question. There are certainly a lot more nightingales in Berlin.
Maybe she went to like Barcelona.
I think there's so many more nightingales in Berlin than one would expect in a city. And the standard reason is that there's just a lot of big green spaces there, but maybe they're just there for the music scene.
Well, on that note, we will finish there. Thank you very much, David, for joining me today. We'll be right back in a moment after this quick excerpt from a bonus edition of BTR Live Studio this week on breakthroughradio.com featuring Gramercy Arms.